Hi, my name is Rob Dornberger, and this is my 15-minute video summary of my final project for CSCIE90 Cloud Computing. My project topic is Amazon Cognito. Amazon Cognito is a service that makes it easy to store user data, app preferences, or game states across devices. You can synchronize data across devices so the user experience is consistent. With Cognito, you don't have to worry about managing a back-end solution to handle user authentication, network state, or storage and sync. Amazon Cognito is really divided into two parts, CognitoIdentity and Cognito Sync. For my presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the identity side. You can connect users as authenticated or unauthenticated. You can use third-party providers like Facebook or Google, and CognitoIdentity will generate a token to connect to AWS services. For my application demonstrating Cognito identity management, I'm going to register my application with both Facebook and Google. I'm going to create a new identity pool in Cognito. I'm going to enter the app IDs for Facebook and Google. I'm going to set up policies for my Cognito roles through AWS IAM. I'm going to create a demo application using JavaScript that allows login through Facebook or Google, and it's hosted in S3. I'm going to set up a policy that allows access to a bucket in S3, and I'm going to display the bucket contents in a table on my web page. And I'm going to go through that next on the detailed examples of how I created this application. This is my bucket policy, and this represents a Cognito public login provider flow where you can register a Facebook app, create a Cognito pool, open Facebook, sign in, get credential, Cognito ID credentials, and get Cognito sync session token. This is an example. This is my project website that I created. So if I go now and if I click on Facebook, it'll bring me up the screen where I'll enter my username and password and authenticate me to Cognito, and then I will be able to click on one of the links and display a picture from my website, and here is a picture of the professor. So next I'm going to go into the details about how I created this application. Now I'm going to show how to register my app with Facebook. First, you want to go to developers.facebook.com. You want to go down and click on Facebook Login, and then click on Get Started. Now you can go up and go to My Apps and click on Add a New App. So I'm going to click on Website, and then I'm going to give my app a name. And I'm going to create a new Facebook app ID. I'm going to say no, this is not a test version, and I'm going to select Education and click on Create App ID. Then I'm going to put my site URL here. This is the site that I created in S3. So here's my site, and then I'm going to click Next, and I'm going to come up and select Skip Quick Start. Then I'm going to go into my settings, and I'm going to go to Advanced. And here on, if I go down here to the client OAuth settings, I'm going to change this to Yes. And I'm going to enter my website URL in here again. And then I'm going to click Save Changes. So now if I go back, here's my app ID that I'll need to use in my application when I access Cognito, so we'll be putting this into the JavaScript. Next, I'm going to explain how to register my app with Google. Okay, to register my app with Google, I'm going to go to console.developers.google.com. And I'm going to come up and click my app, and I'm going to do create a project, and I'm going to give it a new project name. And it's going to show down here that it's creating this project, Cognito 4. And then I'm going to click up here in this project and enable and manage APIs. And then I'm going to go to my social APIs. I'm going to click on Google Plus API. And then I'm going to enable this API. And then I'm going to go to my credentials. Click on credentials. And then I'm going to go to OAuth consent screen. Here it has my email address already. And I'm going to put in a project name. And I'm going to save it. And then you can go in and do your domain verification. And I'm going to click in the domain that I have my S3 site and add domain. And now you can see that it's been added. Now, because I've already added this domain before, I've already done the checking, but you might have to go through and come up with a different screen where it will do domain verification. You have to download a file to the website, and then you have to bring up the domain in Google, and it'll check for that file and make sure that you have access to that domain. And that's it pretty much for setting up Google and identifying it with my app. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new identity pool through Cognito. So I'm going to go to the Amazon Management Console, and I'm going to click on Cognito. And I'm going to go over here to the left, and I'm going to click on Create a New Pool. And I'm going to give the pool, it's going to be my app name. So I'm going to call it Cognito 3. And I'm not going to enable any unauthenticated identities. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to put in my Facebook ID. So here's my Facebook ID, and then here is my Google ID. And I'm going to come over and select Create Pool. So now I have my pool, and now I'm going to go down and click Allow to allow access. And now I've created my pool. So now if I go back in and I edit my pool, I will see that I have a Cognito role for unauthorized. I have a Cognito role for authorized identities. I also have my Facebook ID, and I have my Google Plus ID. So now we're going to go look at the policies that need to be created so that Cognito will have access to our S3 buckets. So now I'm back at the AWS Management Console, and I'm going to go into Identity and Access Management, and I'm going to go into my roles. And here you can see the two new roles that were created. I'm going to go into roles that I have working now so you can see what we need. And so I'm just going to go here to my Rob1 auth role. And we have this policy that was generated, and then this is another policy that I had to enter, and I'm going to go into show policy. And so this shows the access that was allowed to be able to get to the S3 buckets. And you can, this is open, where you could go in and do a put, a get, or delete, or list the buckets. You might want to change your policy to where it will only display the objects and not allow them to be deleted. But this is just an example. But you have to do this so that you're able to go in and display the buckets using Cognito access. And so that's pretty much it for setting up Cognito. Thanks. Now I'm going to go into the Amazon Management Console, and I'm going to go to S3. And I'm going to show you my website that I created. So here's my HTML file. Here is a folder, and it contains some of the JavaScript, the images, the CSS, and that all needs to be uploaded to the website. And then if I go back and look, here are the other buckets that I have on the website I'm going to display in my program that I'm going to show you next. So that's my website. Now I'm going to show you the program that I wrote in JavaScript. So here's some of the code of my program that I wrote in JavaScript. Right here, look where it says Facebook and Google, these are the buttons that are displayed on the web page. If I go down, I've stored my Facebook app ID, my Google client ID, my bucket name. Here's the Cognito identity pool ID. Next, this is where I authenticate using Google, and I just got this from the Google website. And it goes in and authenticates. And then this is the authentication that I did with Facebook. And then this is where I go out to Cognito and get my credentials so that I can go out to AWS and be able to access my S3 bucket. So then I have the credentials, and then here is my new AWS S3 object I can access. And then here is the code where I load the buckets in a table to display on my website. And that's pretty much it as far as my JavaScript program. And now for the final part of my demo, I'm going to show you the website that I created in S3. Here is the link, and here is the website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my Google link, and it's going to ask me to sign into Google because I'm not signed in now. And here's a list of my buckets in Rob B01. And now I can go ahead and click on one of the links, and it'll display a picture. And so here is a picture of the professor. And now if I want to go back, and if I want to click on Facebook, and I was already logged into Facebook this time, so it didn't ask me for an ID again. And here is another picture, the star, from my website. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you for watching and learning about Amazon Cognito.